Redditors who have cut family members off from their lives, what was the final straw for you? When my father took a phone call from me, and I asked him to please be alone for it, I poured out my heart and soul for 9 minutes, tears, sobs, tragedy, everything. I hung up and he texted me a few minutes later saying he had put me on speakerphone and the whole family had heard everything. I responded that it was the last thing they would ever hear of me. Overheard her planning to sabotage my vehicle and set me up to get fired from a job so I would be forced to stay under her roof longer and pay her bills and do all the chores. Fuck you, Mom. So she was going to get you fired, but she also wanted you to pay her bills. Like, how did she reconcile that? I had 3 jobs at the time. The big one she was trying to sabotage was my main source of savings from my own place. She was smart about it. I had been in the hospital for over a month, nearly dying from a rare disorder. My dad had came and spent time with me almost every day, whereas my mom, not even a phone call. When I finally got out and was at home, I called her to update her on what had been going on with me, and she dominated the conversation. She somehow made the entire situation about her and how worried she was, what she would have done if that happened to her, etc. My 2-year-old ran up to me and was hugging my leg, and as I looked down into the eye of my baby, I realized I couldn't even imagine if my baby had just gone through what I did, not visiting, not calling, and making every conversation about me. That was pretty much the last time I ever talked to my mom. My sister had already cut Mom from her life, and that moment was when it dawned on me Mom really doesn't care about us, she doesn't actually love us. A loving mother would never have treated their children the way that woman treated us. I cut my uncle out of my life the day my gran died. She had terminal lung cancer, and the last 3 months of her life, she lived out in complete agony. My mother and I moved in with her to care for her full time. I was only 18, working, and still in full-time education. It took so much out of me. My uncle didn't offer us a hand once, and when we asked him for help he was essentially like, no, she smells like piss. In the days leading up to her death, when she was pretty much a vegetable, he finally came round to discuss how her money was going to be handled, demanding he was entitled to more than us because he was the eldest. Despite the fact that he was incredibly well off, didn't do anything to help my gran while she was dying, and the fact my mother and I were essentially living in poverty at the time. All he cared about was her money. It's been 2 years since she died and all of that stuff is still being sorted out, but I refuse to talk to him now. I hate him. He's such a heartless pig that couldn't even be upset about his mother dying because he was so excited at the prospect of receiving money. Same thing happened to me when grandmother passed, spent the last 2 years of her life with only me visiting and caring for her, while she wasted away from Alzheimer's. But everyone in the family showed up for the funeral I planned alone, and everyone was super pissed when they realized there was no money as the nursing home took it all. My last memory of my aunts and uncles were all of them arguing over a $50 TV I bought her. The night before we thought my son was going to die, removal of ventilator, and expected him to pass shortly after, my dad told me how awful of a mother I was. Never talked to him again. It's been 8 years. Edit. My son ended up passing away about 2 weeks later after this conversation. Sorry to hear that. My mother-in-law said the same thing to my wife while our daughter was dying in the NICU. That was 11 years ago. We haven't spoken to her since. We're better off with her out of our lives. Loaning them $40,000, which I had to borrow, to prevent foreclosure of the family farm, after they begged me for months, only to have them pretend it was a gift and making me hire an attorney to get the money back. To make it worse, they even accused me of forging documents, etc., to show it was a loan, trying to ruin my name in the process. Fortunately, they had paid for 4 years and that was what saved me. My nephew, who was raised more or less as my little brother, stole my deceased father's coin collection from my mother, put it in a Coinstar machine, and used the money he got to score heroin. Haven't spoken to him since. I can't. Sad part is if he had a brain he probably could have gotten a good chunk more if he sold it to a dealer. At least that way you could have bought it back to retain your father's memory even if you had to pay a lot for it. My sister's an addict. No amount of love and support from us is going to change that. She has to change by herself and right now, she doesn't seem to be able to do that. She's lied to us, stolen from us, lied to us some more, and now there is no trust left. She's the only person that I have banned from my home. The final straw was her coming to the house with a friend, both of them obviously under the influence, and she kept going to the bathroom looking for medication that we were hiding from the last time she stole pain medication. When my brother finally admitted to molesting my sister and I growing up, and my mother and younger brother picked him and literally blocked me and told every single person in my bloodline that I was trash, so they all blocked me too. Also, it wouldn't get out, so they wouldn't know the truth, like I was about to take out a billboard or something. I am an orphan now. My Esile was raped by another in-law at 18. When she told her parents, it came out that his brother, her uncle, had been molesting her since she was very young. The reaction from the rest of the family was, "Let's have a family meeting where the rapists will apologize and the family can go on as normal." They also wanted to know the specifics of the abuse so they could determine how bad the acts actually were. Our part of the family noped out on that, and we cut off contact. The rest chose to live with a child molester. Fuck them. When I was 9, my mom told me that she had wanted an abortion with me, but they weren't readily available in 1959, so I was lucky. Over the years it was on-off with her. I'd swear her out of my life, and then let her back in. I was blamed for everything that was wrong in her life and everyone else's. When I was in my mid-50s, she screamed at me on the phone and repeated more than once that she hated me. I told her she wanted an abortion in 1959 and congratulations, you just received your abortion. I now will allow a text here and there, but we don't speak and I am totally fine with the situation. Edit. When I was 15, my father committed suicide, leaving us with his mother. She dragged us to church as she was convinced his suicide would send us to hell. We met a wonderful couple with 3 kids of their own, relatively close to our ages in exact order, 2 girls then a boy. Turned out they lived close to us and all of the neighborhood kids knew them and hung out at their house. We started to do the same. If it hadn't been for this couple, I have serious doubts as to whether or not the 3 of us would have survived. My aunt and uncle threw out their daughter for coming out as gay at 14. I took her in and got a lawyer to get custody of her from me ASAP. Because I didn't trust my uncle one bit, and figured he'd remember he could force her to a conversion therapy camp if he still had custody. He tried, but thankfully after I had custody and could throw him off my property, and get him arrested for trying to drag her out of my home. His 2 sons are on my shit list as well for trying to sneak onto my property to rescue her. I've flat out told them that if I see them on my property again, I'm shooting them. That part of the family doesn't come to Christmas dinner with grandma anymore. Years and years of being told I never do anything right by my mother. Some of the highlights. Scored 99% on a test and got told I was stupid for forgetting a $sign on a currency equation. Made county finals for wrestling, got dropped off and asked how long before she had to be back because I'd rather go shopping than stay. Qualified as team alternate for the national championships and had to turn it down because your father and I have plans and I'm not canceling. My sister was stealing packs of cigarettes for her friends and I took the blame. And beating, despite none of my friends being smokers or drinkers, since we were all doing high-level sports. My son was born and she got mad that my wife breastfed because it meant she couldn't bottle feed him. I took the abuse on that one too because I didn't intervene and stop it. That last one did it for me. He's 8 now, has no idea she exists. It's been almost 7 years. Technically my mum did the cutting off part, but when I was little my dad kidnapped me and my sibling abroad just to get back at my mum. The mastermind behind it all was his new wife. She was a true psychopath. Me and my siblings spent about a year in a house with that psychopath being constantly psychologically and physically abused by her. As my dad drank himself into a coma, my mum eventually got us back and we never spoke to them since, and we haven't heard anything more about our father. My dad stopped talking to me because he found some shit I wrote 40 years ago when I was 10 and pissed off that he abandoned me and my sister. He had come back right around that time, so it wasn't much. I was into spies and covert stuff, so who knows what it was about. He finds it 40 years later. Waits until I come over on Father's Day and gets pissed off in front of me and my kids. Yeah, I haven't bothered to contact him again, though I was very careful not to angrily say anything I'll regret. I'm so so tired of having to be the adult with my parents. I put up with everything for years and years because a part of me believed that if I ever needed my mom in an emergency, she'd be there. Never had happened before, but I never needed help. An emergency happened, she wasn't there. The equation of our relationship no longer made sense. My father told me he would prefer me to be the dying and the most miserable person on earth, as long as I was religious rather than being happy, successful, and myself. My mother just sat there and nodded in agreement. I grabbed all my stuff and left that night. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.